Good morning, everybody. Welcome everybody on Facebook and everybody who'll be listening on Spreaker later. So happy that you're all here. To the retreat attendees, it's been a wonderful journey. Lots of amazing information, lots of tools to take home and see where they bring you to. And so today's conversation in the Wisdom Circle will be an integration of the information from the retreat, but will also be a standalone topic for everybody listening elsewhere. And it is compassion as heart activation, heart awakening, as a method and a path to coming into a truer, more pure state of being. And so I'll start by asking everyone to close their eyes and sit nice and tall. And just begin focusing on your breath. And as you're focusing on your breath, as you're becoming more and more present, I'll share this little story and a mantra with you. The Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva said to the Buddha, "Bhagwan, I have a mantra of great compassionate heart dharani, and now wish to proclaim it, for comforting and pleasing all living beings, for healing all illness, for living beings to attain additional lifespan, for living beings to gain wealth, for extinguishing all evil karma and weighty sins, for keeping away from hindrance and disasters, for producing merits of all pure dharmas, for maturing all virtuous roots, for overcoming all fears, for fulfilling all good wishes. Bhagwan, please be merciful and allow me to speak." The Buddha said yes. And the Bodhisattva said many things, followed by, "If there are monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, pure youth, and maidens who wish to recite and hold up this mantra, they should arouse the great merciful and compassionate heart for all living beings, and follow me in making these vows." Namo, great compassionate Avalokiteshvara, may I quickly know all dharmas, all duties. May I soon obtain the wisdom eye. May I quickly ferry all living beings to the shore of liberation. May I soon obtain virtuous, skillful means to enlighten various living beings. May I quickly board the Prajna boat, the boat of wisdom. May I soon transcend the ocean of suffering. May I quickly achieve precepts, samadhi, and the way. May I soon ascend the mountain of nirvana. May I quickly dwell in the house of non-action. May I soon unite with the Dharma nature body. If I go toward the mountain of knives of itself breaks up. If I go toward the boiling oil of itself dries up. If I go toward hell, the hell of itself disappears. If I go toward the hungry ghosts themselves become full. If I go toward the demons, their evil thoughts of themselves are tamed. If I go toward the animals, they themselves attain a very great wisdom. And this is all because of compassion. And taking a breath in and a breath out, placing the right hand on the heart and left hand over the right. And we'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om. Breathing in. Bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledging all that is, and drawing the face to center and releasing the hands. And in honor of the great Bodhisattva and the Buddha for allowing him to speak, so grateful for this beautiful mantra, which is called the Great Compassion Mantra, the Dharani Mantra, or the Dharani Sutra. And over all the ages that humans have been here, existing on this planet, we've been talking about compassion. It may go by different names in different languages. It may have slightly different descriptions. But the basic understanding of compassion is that it is the heartfelt understanding and empathy of another's suffering, as well as one's own suffering. It's nothing else. It doesn't include preferences, excuses. It doesn't include justification, separation. Compassion is the act and the essence of seeing and understanding the suffering of another and holding a space for that person's experience that is a form of a blessing, really. It gives that individual permission to do what they must, to heal their own heart, and to not concern themselves with the thought that you might harm them in some way. It gives individuals permission to seek out their own explanation, to seek out their own understanding and their own resolution. Compassion is not imposing. Compassion is not manipulative or demanding. Compassion is pure. It's pure like love. It's pure like grace. It's pure space. And sometimes people don't understand what holding space for someone is. Holding space is allowance. It is allowing non-judgmentalism, no expectation, no criticism, no opinion, no, if you would just do this my way, you'd be fine. No. No, haven't you learned yet? No. Holding space is just being present and witnessing this universal human struggle that we all endure, every one of us. And compassion is the foundation for that space. As the Bodhisattva said, may I come to know quickly all the dharmas, all the duties, all the ethics. May I come to know quickly so that my ignorance doesn't harm myself or anybody else. May I come to understand that I have a responsibility, and part of my personal responsibility is to not harm you out of uncontrolled emotions and delusion or ignorance. May I come to know the dharmas, the way of the universe, which is really, poetically put, a free-flowing energy that is not really so free-flowing because it has a pattern to it. And the pattern is constantly repeating itself over and over and over again. And so may I not be so stubborn as to think that I've got a better pattern, and then try emphatically to rewrite the pattern of the universe to suit my own ego. May I be humble enough to just step into that flow and accept whatever it brings me. May I soon obtain the wisdom eye. So the wisdom eye is a few things. Obviously, it's wisdom. May I come to understand and see the necessity of that universal pattern and how it is the fabric of everything, and that I'm part of that everything. I'm not separate from it. The wisdom eye is also a form of protection, and the protection comes from knowing the truth and not being lost in the fear of ignorance. The third eye opening to its own self, free of my egoic preferences. May we all come soon into the knowing of the third eye, into the wisdom of the third eye. May I quickly ferry all living beings to the shore of liberation. So that sounds like a real big job, like we got to go buy a boat, right? We got to learn how to ride the boat, drive the boat, obstacles, avoid the rocks. Not really. We don't need a boat, per se. We need a heart that's open. Ferrying all beings to the shores of liberation simply means that I will not step in front of you and say you can't pass. And I will live my life in service of your liberation. Whatever I can do, whether it's sitting here and offering these talks to whoever would like to hear them, whether it's facilitating the ashram, supporting the cafe, meeting together to talk about practices that are appropriate for individuals, whatever it is, we show up for each other. And we walk each other home, as Ram Dass says. That's the ferrying. And the unity is the boat. So we don't really have to go buy anything or get any kind of a license. We just need to show up for each other. And have a willingness in our heart to not harm each other. To see the sacred blessing in the existence of all things. Now that's not just you and me as humans, That's everything, every living being. And depending upon the tradition that a person belongs to, that's a pretty inclusive picture. Animals, dogs, cats, monkeys, gorillas, tigers, bears, oh my, the whole picture. Insects, butterflies, caterpillars, bees, those cute little honeybees, those frightful wasps, those 8-legged critters we call spiders. They're part of all living beings, right? The mosquitoes, the ticks, the lantern bugs for those who live in Pennsylvania. Right? They're living beings. They have consciousness flowing through them. They're part of the pattern of the universe. For some traditions, grass, trees, flowers. Don't pick the flower. When you pick the flower, you kill the flower. If the flower's ending, coming toward the end of its lifespan, then bring the flower in and put it on the altar. But if the flower is a bud, let it bud in nature with its mother, with its sisters and brothers, where it's meant to be. Yeah. And then it can propagate. It can make more babies. Maybe some will be named Zane. And others Bryce. And then in some traditions, rocks are alive. Rocks are living beings. The earth herself is a living being. So when we say, I'm going to accompany all living beings to the shores of liberation, what we're saying is, I'm going to recognize the ultimate oneness that exists in this world, in this universe, and beyond. And I'm going to be a good steward, harming none, loving all, practicing compassion, and being of service. Doing my very best to be wise and not ignorant. May I soon obtain virtuous, skillful means to enlighten various living beings. Skillful means. May we all be teachers. But may we not be so arrogant as to think that we have all the answers. May our teaching be more suggestion, so that whoever it is that we're speaking to understands that they have options, and that just because something worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. It's like the great diet fad of America, somebody wrote a book, Here's How to Lose Weight Fast. And they said, so I did this, and 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 I did this. And they called it, like the keto diet or something, I don't know. You put a name to it. What's the California diet? Isn't there one from California? There's like a famous one from there?
South Beach.
The South Beach diet, yeah. So maybe they called it that, or the grapefruit diet, or whatever. And so, gazillion people come and buy this book. But it only works for maybe 10 to 30% of the people who buy the book. And that depends on a few things. It depends on if they actually do it. first of all. And second of all, it depends on them, their body type, their chemistry, their DNA, their lifestyle, their willingness to change their entire life to match the diet plan. It won't work for the other 70 to 90% of people because it's not right for them. They need something else. So practices are like that. Information is like that. Some information is meant for you. Other information is not meant for you. So you only take what your heart tells you is meant for you. And you understand that the rest is meant for someone else. And you hold an intention in your heart that the two should meet. That the one who needs the information receives the information in a timely manner, with skillful understanding and rapid application. May I quickly board the prajna boat, the boat of wisdom. May I jump on board and not jump off, just because the seas get a little rough. May I become so intrigued and curious about wisdom that I start asking questions. Many of us come from traditions that don't like questions being asked. Many of us come from municipalities and maybe even countries that don't like questions being asked. But in yoga, the asking of questions is a necessity. As a matter of fact, the entire Bhagavad Gita is a bunch of questions. Arjuna goes to Krishna. You go to God and say, well, what about this? Well, what about this? But what about this? Well, what do you mean by that? You ask questions so that you can come into a deeper knowing in your heart. And then you work to embrace that knowing and honor it completely as you are meant to in this life. May I soon transcend the ocean of suffering. This is sometimes a little bit misunderstood by people, no matter what tradition we're quoting. May I transcend the sea of suffering doesn't mean my suffering is going to go away. I'm going to suffer. So are you. We're in a biological body, living in a biological world. Things happen, and we're going to suffer. But what we transcend is the ignorant relationship we have to the suffering. We think the suffering defines us. I'm nothing but suffering. The suffering is never going to end, therefore I'm forever lost to my own enlightenment. It's not true. Suffering is your greatest teacher. Somebody mentioned that yesterday. Yeah. Ilona? Yeah? Yeah. Suffering is your greatest teacher. You're absolutely correct. And suffering is your greatest friend. Because suffering provides you with the opportunity to learn about yourself. Completely. And it also provides you with the opportunity to recognize a similar pattern in other people. So you can more and more, as you understand your own suffering and have a correct relationship with it, look at other people and recognize their suffering. And then you can hold intention for them. May they have correct relationship with their suffering. May they understand their suffering. May they know their suffering. May they see clearly what's being taught to them. And may they acquire a deep, deep level of compassion as a result. As a result of their suffering. May they be awakened and not exist in the sea of ignorance. But first we have to recognize that suffering isn't typically something that's done to us. It's something that we kind of welcome in. We do. We're our own problem. We're also our own cure. We create 99.999% of our own suffering just because of the way we see things. Just because of perspective and preference, we create all of our suffering. So we can change all of our suffering as well. May I quickly achieve precepts like samadhi and the way. May I quickly become awakened May my heart become awakened. May I become one with God. Not become one with God, because we already are one with God. May I know that. May I stop denying it. May I stop using my suffering as an excuse to stay away from that, to deny its presence in my life and its conscious flow through my being. May I stop using my own ignorance as an excuse to deny oneness. May I enter into a state of samadhi, a state of blissful awakening. May I know the way. What is the way? It can't be defined. You'll know it. You'll feel it. It's like a good song. You just want to sing it. Or a good poem, you just want to read it. Or a deep love, you just want to feel it. The way is like that. May I soon ascend the mountain of nirvana. And ascending a mountain is not easy. There's obstacles everywhere you turn around. There's the possibility of landslides and all kinds of things that you have to deal with. But may we continue on in the face of adversity, in the face of difficulty, obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. May those obstacles just make us stronger. May they just allow us to become more insightful. May we learn from them. May we acquire the skills necessary as a result of them, and then eventually reach the ultimate goal, always keeping in mind that what goes up must come down. And the ultimate reason for attaining nirvana, for attaining awakening, for awakening, is to come back here and be of complete service to others on their path to awakening. It's not to hoard awakening. It's mine. I've got it now. I'm not going near anybody who's not awakened. Isn't that silly? No. You experience awakening in your moments, in your life, in your time, to whatever degree it is, and then you bring that out into the world. And you allow it to be an inspiration. You share it generously. And you don't ask people to understand you. You don't ask people to understand your awakening. Like, why don't you get why I'm so happy? You don't ask people to understand that. You just be happy. You just be awakened. You just be an example. And you don't say, did you get the example? Because that's silly. That's just silly. May I quickly dwell in the house of non-action. But we've been talking all weekend about how action is necessary. Intention is not enough. Action is necessary. And it's true. Intention is not initially enough. It must be married with action. Our lives must change. Our intentions must be played out until the action is no longer necessary, because we just are that. We just are that intention. So initially, when we're coming from a place of deep separation, fear, anxiety, anger, and we start working with intentions, we're like, okay, I am love, I am love, I am love, I am love. This isn't working. I am love, I am love, I am love. Why isn't this working? Why isn't everybody being nice to me? I'm love. It's like I am love has nothing to do with you being nice to me. I am love has nothing to do with what you do. So we got to, look at those intentions and ask ourselves, what exactly am I saying? So step number 1, define it. I am love is not a definition. It is an intention. What is love? Look it up in every book, every encyclopedia, Wikipedia it. That was a tongue twister. Look it up in scriptures. Write down all the different definitions for love. And then decide which one you're talking about. And then when you say, I am love, I am love, I am love, you know what you're talking about. You know what to expect a little bit more, or what you're asking for. And you know that your intention is not, may everybody love me, may everybody love me, may everybody love me. May everybody think I'm wonderful, may everybody think I'm wonderful. May everybody be nice to me. May everybody else see how awakened I am. May they all know how awakened I am, and may they all awaken so they don't irritate me out of this state of love. That's not being love. I am love, I am love, I am love. The rest of it is none of my business. To be the love is to walk the path of love and to have no expectation from anybody else. None. May I soon unite with the Dharma nature body, with the one, with the universe, with the knowing, with the way, with the wholeness. If I go toward the mountain of knives of itself breaks up. Because in this state of great compassion, knives have no meaning. They can't harm you. Obstacles can't harm you. Areas that look treacherous don't faze you. Because you understand what will be. And what is meant to be. For your betterment and for the betterment of all. If I go toward boiling oil, the boiling oil of itself dries up. Because it can't harm you. And it knows that. So it just stops being boiling oil. Hate cannot exist in a world of love. And love is the ultimate power, so much stronger, so much more powerful than hate could ever be. And so hate diminishes, it goes away. Just like boiling oil dries up. If I go toward hell, the hell itself disappears. Because the one whose heart is awakened within compassion can walk right into hell where suffering exists and shine a light on healing. And hell disperses. And people see with more optimism and with more hope because you allowed your light to shine. Because you stepped into your compassionate nature and were brave enough, courageous enough. The bravery and the courage are really only needed for the first few steps. It's kind of like, anybody here ever go parasailing? The kind where you jump off the cliff? I haven't. I have gone zip lining, down in Costa Rica, which was very similar. So you go all the way to the top of the mountain, and you know what goes up must come down on a zip line. Yeah. So you're all the way up there with all the poison dart frogs. And they clip you to this wire by a little pulley, like the kind that maybe your mom had on the clothesline in the backyard, made out of aluminum. And you look at the however many thousands of feet or hundreds of feet it is from point A to point B, and the beautiful chasm, the gully beneath, and this is like the highest zip line in the world or something, I don't know. But, and you're like, okay, all I got to do is jump and go, and it'll do the rest. And it's like, I don't know. Do you really know what you're doing when you hook that thing up? You know? Do I really know what I'm doing? Jumping off of this platform into the great unknown. I don't know. I've got 10,000 reasons to say no. And I've only got one to say yes. And that one needed to be accompanied by courage and bravery. And sometimes it doesn't go as it's planned. So I jumped off the platform. I don't think anybody pushed me. I don't know. Pretty sure I jumped. So I jump off the platform, and you're just holding on for dear life, and you're like, what did I do? And then I got out to the middle of the zip line, and it seemed to be slowing down. And I'm like, this doesn't seem to be right. I mean, I'm going like scientifically. I am on an angle. My weight should be carrying me. Why am I stopping? Dead stop. Halfway between point A and point B. Over the highest drop for a zip line in Costa Rica and maybe the world. And I'm just sitting there. And in one breath, my mind said so many things to me. But the thing that stood out, and I'm tearing up because it was so freaking beautiful. I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, it's so beautiful. There was nothing except for me hovering however many hundreds of feet off of the ground, being held onto this zip line by an aluminum pulley. Then reality hit, or the non-reality. Ed was still back on the platform, and I could almost hear him saying, why isn't she moving? And I've got one guide down that end and one guide that end screaming, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. And then it was back into, this reality. I did what they taught me to do. I turned around, and he's like, don't move, I'll be right there. And I put my hands on the guideline, the wire, the zip wire, and I started to move myself. And that's what you do if it stops. They tell you that, it's and I think they kind of maybe do it on purpose, I don't know. But so I'm moving myself, and he's zipping out there. This guy's so fast on the zip line, And he hooks me into his harness, and he looks at my pulley. And you know how the pulley has that little wheelie thing, and the line is supposed to go on the wheelie thing? That's not where my line was. My line was off the wheelie thing, and right next to the little latch. And it's a real good thing that I didn't see that first. Man, did I learn a lot of lessons. But courage and bravery to jump off the platform is the first one. So when we start talking about stepping into a life of compassion, we're standing on that platform. And to be honest with you, it didn't really matter that the pulley wasn't attached properly, because I was either going to survive or I wasn't. And it really would have been a majestic fall. You know what I'm saying? Right? I mean, wow, what a way to go. Anyway, but I didn't die. I made it to the other side, and they're all worried, do you want to go down? We can have somebody escort you down. I'm at the top of a 140-foot tree, and the only way down is either zip line or climb. So I'm no, I'm good. I'll zip line rest of the way. What else can happen? So you get on, you jump off the platform with courage and bravery as your companions, and then you find that this compassion is so powerful, you don't mind dying. You don't mind. You don't mind letting your ego die. You don't mind letting your preferences die. You don't mind no longer taking more than you need. You don't mind no longer hoarding. You don't mind no longer judging. You don't mind. And at first, that's a really alien concept. It's now you're moving very quickly back and forth between the world of dying in the midst of amazing beauty and the world of, I want to survive. This ego wants to live. Turn around, start pulling yourself. It's a battle. It's a battle that continues on. for everybody. But the more courage and bravery that you have in those first phases, and the more you allow your heart to surrender to the ultimate beauty, the more the compassion becomes the power. And the courage and bravery are no longer actually necessary. Does that make sense? Yeah. Yes, Oksana.
When you jumped off the platform and before the stop, what was the focus? What do you remember that you were registering once you made that jump?
The first thing that I thought when I jumped off the platform was a conversation with my brother. I've always been somewhat afraid of heights, and so was he. And he said, when he was 36 years old, or 30, when he turned 30, he's passed away now, but when he turned 30, on his 30th birthday, he went up into a hot air balloon. And he said it cured him of his fear of heights. And I brought that conversation, it was right there in front of my mind, and I remember thinking, if this doesn't cure me of my fear of heights, I guess I have to go up in a hot air balloon next. Well, here goes. And then I breathed in, and I jumped. And as I was jumping, I thought, well, it doesn't really matter now because I'm in process. And then as I was moving, that all left. And I was just overtaken by the beauty. I mean, it really was beautiful. Just go there if you have a chance. Just make sure that your pulley is attached properly. So as I was going, it really was, my mind was on the beauty of it and just the expansive nature of it all. And then as I started slowing down, I could feel the ego coming back in and being like, uh-oh, but the beauty. No, uh-oh. Pay attention now. And then all of a sudden it was either I looked at the beauty or I looked at what was wrong. And I tried really, really hard. Which is an interesting experience, to hold on to the beauty while I was paying attention to what was happening, what was going wrong. And in all honesty, while I was shaken, I knew nothing was going to happen. I was shaken, my ego maybe, was concerned with dying. Oh, isn't that just like the ego? My ego was concerned with, what if I fall? But I knew I was fine. And I knew it. And so it was just kind of this interesting back and forth. And then the realization that my husband might get hooked up and try to come out here and do something, so I better get moving. And then the guy was there before I knew it. And then there was really no reason to be concerned about the pulley not being attached properly because I was hooked onto his harness and his pulley was attached properly. And then it was like, well, I survived that. And it really is symbolic of this journey into compassion. It just is. I didn't realize that when I first started telling the story, by the way. But it is, because you become so overtaken by the beauty of the compassion that the death of the ego doesn't really matter anymore. It doesn't matter. It's not something to be afraid of, and you realize that. And as long as you are paying more awareness to your heart than to your ego, it will allow you to drop the ego to some degree, and potentially to some really deep degree. If I go toward hungry ghosts, the hungry ghosts themselves become full. Because in the light of compassion, there's no hunger. I mean, there might be physical hunger. So some of the retreat attendees this weekend said, as soon as you walked in the door, what did you feel? As soon as you met your community for the weekend, what did you feel?
Like coming home, peace.
Peace, like coming home. Yeah. Full. Like, what is this fullness? I didn't even eat dinner yet. full. Like everything is really okay, and it really is. And it is, even when it isn't. If I go toward demons, their evil thoughts themselves are tamed. Because the deeper we go into compassion, the less anything can really touch us. Because we understand its purpose. We understand what acquiring things and losing things, what acquiring resources and losing resources, what acquiring people and losing people means. We understand the broader picture of it. So even the things in life that we look at that we perceive of as evil don't have the same power over us. It's not that those behaviors are not still harmful, but it's that we understand more about them. We don't just look and say, you're bad, you're wrong. We understand more and more that it's not the person, it's the action that is harmful. And that the person, like the pirate in the story that we shared the other night, is a product of many things. Many things. And compassion holds a space in which we can begin to understand that. It's pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. If I go toward animals, they themselves have great wisdom. Animals already have great wisdom. But we don't know it because we're ignorant. We think they're stupid. We think there's no way an animal can be smart as me. There's no way that little ant has anywhere near the consciousness that I have. I dare you make yourself this little and go into an ant colony and see how smart they are. They are so smart. You think a spider's not as intelligent as a human? Just because they don't have laboratories and cars? Can you make a web? Can you spin a web out of the strongest material in this world that comes out of your butt? I suggest there's some pretty impressive cosmic intelligence going on there, you know. So their wisdom becomes obvious to us because their unity with us becomes obvious to us. The oneness becomes obvious to us. And then we see wisdom everywhere. Everywhere. Even in ignorance, we see the overarching wisdom that in order for something to awaken, it must be asleep first. So ignorance is present so that there can be an awakening, so that there can be a consistent rediscovery on different various levels. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean it's not happening. Just because we don't see it does not mean it isn't happening. It's always happening. Little micro happenings and big macro happenings. Little happenings that nobody will ever know about. And huge, huge epiphanies that everybody will see. It's happening always on all levels. And the more compassionate we allow our nature to be, the more we can recognize that and really, truly honor the journey of the other. Because we know there is no other. There's only all of us. So I handed this form out to the retreat attendees, and I will also post this up on this recording after the recording stops. It's just a little recognition sheet about what heart awakening is.
By any chance, does somebody have a double copy of those? I laid them on the chair.
Yeah. There you go. Wasn't that compassionate? And again, I will also post this paper up online. So I just made a recognition sheet, and they're just, they're things to remind, to recognize, to have recognition of with regard to the heart awakening into compassion. And the first is that, the process of coming to know who you really are is necessary for compassion. So we need to start process, or continue process, or deepen process, or acknowledge process. That it's a process. It's not enough to sit here and to one time say, okay, somebody's been telling me to do this affirmation, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. I am love, I am love, I am love, I am love. Okay, it doesn't obviously work because I don't feel like love and nobody's looking at me any differently. That's not enough. The process has not yet begun. Or maybe it has just begun. And now courage and bravery need to be your counterparts so that you can jump off the platform into the deeper process. And the essence of the process is not to have someone else tell you that you're doing it well. The essence of the process is not to have someone say to you, oh my gosh, I so see how much work you've done and how much you've changed. You're amazing. I'm so inspired. The essence of the process is you coming to know yourself. And it matters not what anyone else thinks, understands, or believes. The second point or recognition is the willingness to hold space for both the light and the shadow and understand they both have a purpose. The shadow happens because we're alive in this world that's of the physical plane where things collide and then coming together move apart again. You know, and the consequence of being alive in a physical plane is that you're going to collide with things, and your physical body is going to feel the consequence of that. And your mental state is going to like it or not. And your ego is going to choose one of those and decide to form a world around attaining that like or avoiding that dislike. So this concept of separation is part of our shadow. And the awakening, the compassion of the heart to its own healing is the concept of light. And they're both part of this path. And they always will be, without exception. The experience of forgiveness of self and others. Because if we're not forgiving, then we're holding grudges. And there was this little cartoon I always like to refer to when I talk about forgiveness and holding grudges of others, and what that might look like is the woman sitting in meditation, and she's all peaceful, and she's got a little smile on her face, maybe a little bit of a smirk. She's got a little thought bubble going on up there, and it says, "My light is so bright, and hers is so dim." If you're thinking someone else's light is dim, then yours needs to brighten up a little bit, because your light is the one that is dim. If you are comparing yourself to the path of others, there's no comparison, ever. Forgiveness of self and others. Forgiveness of yourself for every time you thought someone else's light was dim. And forgiveness of others for behaving as if it were. Forgiveness, because we're all in process. The acceptance of acceptance. I know I used the word twice, but it's just so necessary, because we may say, I accept the way everything is, but then inside there's this little voice that's saying, no, you don't. No, you don't. You don't accept the fact that, so-and-so was out late last night. You don't accept the fact that your kids leave a mess in your house. You don't accept the fact that it rained instead of was sunny today. You don't accept the fact that you had to cancel your vacation. You don't accept that. And yet, you're trying to accept it. And the trying can kind of be a little bit of the issue. Because in the trying, you don't have courage and bravery as your escorts. In trying, you have the ego as your escort. In trying, you don't have humility and patience as your escorts. Trying, you have your ego as your escort, because when you try, you either succeed or you fail. But acceptance of acceptance is based on surrender, not trying. So just come into complete acceptance. Just do it. Just jump off the platform. And don't worry about how your pulley is tied or not. Because once you're out there, it's not going to matter. You're going to see that it doesn't matter. You're going to see that there's a much bigger, more beautiful picture than what you've been allowing yourself to perceive. The strength of discernment and self-responsibility. I think that there's a tendency in the spiritual world today, in the kind of New Age spirituality, to be very free-flowing. And that's okay, as long as it's accompanied by discernment. But what we see happening, and this happens a lot in the yoga world, is that people think that non-harming means I have to be nice to everybody. Non-harming means I need to make everybody happy. Non-harming means that I am responsible for your happiness. And that's not the truth. Discernment tells me that you are responsible for your happiness, the same as I am responsible for mine. Discernment tells me that your relationship to your suffering is your path, and my relationship to my suffering is mine. Discernment tells me that I must have healthy boundaries in place, and that to have healthy boundaries is not harmful to you. It's actually helpful to you. Because when I have healthy boundaries and I hold into my healthy boundaries, I am less likely to harm you. But when I have flimsy boundaries and I don't really care whether I keep them or not, then the tendency is I'm going to be harmful to you, because I am going to have every possible expectation in the world that you should be as free-flowing and carefree as I am. And so I'll come up to you and put you on the spot and say, why aren't you? And make you feel bad for no reason whatsoever, with no purpose whatsoever. Discernment stops us from behaving that way. Discernment allows us to recognize that healthy boundaries are what support the vow of ahimsa. Healthy boundaries are what allow me, are what support me in not being violent with you. Healthy boundaries are not about you. They're not about keeping you out. They're about me. Healthy boundaries are not about me saying, you can and can't do this. Healthy boundaries are about me not blaming you for what you do. Because if I hold into healthy boundaries, then I don't have to blame you. I don't have to put you into a guilt trip. I don't have to call you names. I don't have to make you feel bad about yourself. Because I'm holding into my healthy boundaries. You see what I'm saying? Because none of us are very good at responding. We're all really good at reacting. But very few of us are wonderful at responding. And if someone is violating a boundary, our tendency is not to respond, it is to react. You broke my boundary, you SOB, you're a horrible person, you always do this to me, you. What about me? What about, did I hold my boundary? Did I maintain my boundary? Did I let you know there was a consequence to breaking my boundary? Or was my boundary a flimsy fence that could be easily pushed through? Self-responsibility. Self-responsibility. And I can't really say that enough. Because compassion is also a self-responsibility. And when we are flimsy in our compassion, compassion becomes pity. And pity is violence. Pity is a violent perspective that creates superiority complexes. The boundary that we hold to ourselves within our practice of compassion is that I will practice compassion and not pity. And so if a person is complaining about their station in life, then I'll listen consciously if I feel that that's the necessary thing to do. And I'll acknowledge this is their path. And I won't pity them. I won't say, oh, you poor thing. Life has dealt you such a bad deck of cards. You have every reason to be whatever it is that you're being. No. Compassion says, I see and I understand your suffering. I also see and understand ignorance, because I too suffer and I too am ignorant. And then you can celebrate the fact that you know that person will wake up one day, because you too will wake up one day. And you have already started. We all have little wake-ups here, little wake-ups there. We have little alarms going off everywhere. But the big alarm is coming for all of us. And it will wake us up. It will. The deepening of compassion as the eyes cease seeing only separation and begin to recognize the necessity and reality of unity. We've talked so much about that already. The surrender into a state of being that is love-based. It's not mushy love. It's not like, oh, I love you, man. I mean, yeah, that's a good thing to say. I love you, man. But it's a strong love. It's like, I love you so much, I am setting you free of me. That's how much I love you. I love you so much that I am not going to hurt you. I love you so much that I am not going to expect anything of you. I love you so much that I am just going to love you and leave you alone. I love you so much that I'm not going to impose my expectations on you. I love you so much that I am going to celebrate your mistakes as well as your realizations. I love you so much that I'm going to cheer you on no matter what, even if I feel it must be from a distance. I love you so much, I am not going to blame you. I love you so much, I am not going to hate you. I love you so much, I am not going to judge you. I love you so much, I'm just going to love you. And I don't really care if you love me back. It doesn't have to happen. That's a powerful love. And that's the kind of love we're talking about. And then beyond that even. When we talk about love within spirituality, and when we talk about acceptance within spirituality, we're talking that the love goes so deep that you love the light within the person. You love the person. You do not have to love the behavior, but the person. Because don't you want them to awaken? Like, don't you want them to feel safe? Don't you want them to heal? Think about that for a moment. Isn't it important that every injured person heals? Because otherwise we just have a world full of injured people, and injured people have a tendency toward violence. So when we're angry with somebody for their poor behavior, hating them is not the answer. Wishing them to suffer more on account of what they've done is not the answer. They're already violent. They're only going to get more violent if they suffer more. Or maybe they'll wake up. That's their karma. I don't know. Sometimes people wake up when they suffer more. You hit rock bottom, you bounce up to the light. But most oftentimes, they just suffer. Don't you want them to heal? So that they can find their own goodness within them. You know, a person who has no hope has no way of finding the goodness. Don't you want them to hope? To see that within them there is the same potential that exists within you. The potential for compassion, for peace, for love, for joy, for unity. That's what we want for everybody. The knowing that a higher, more potent and inclusive truth exists. The wisdom of simple joy. The soft humility of peace. The merging into oneness. The expression of devotion to the divine and to all that is as sacred. These are the recognitions for heart awakening. These are the necessities that go along with it. If you take any one of these out, then the heart is only partly awoke. But if you have all of these, and then probably even some more, then the heart is the brightest light in the universe, brighter than 10,000 suns. That's a lot of bright. That's a lot of love. So we have a few minutes left, so I'll open it for questions or comments. And if anybody on Facebook has questions or comments, please feel free to put them into the text, And I'll answer them as soon as the recording is done. Yes?
I just had a very, kind of mind-blowing experience when I was meditating this morning. When I was a small child, I was almost drowned. A boy came and drowned me, he pushed me under in a pool, and two people came and saved me from him. I was just real tiny. But I've always had a fear of drowning, and I kept seeing myself today as laying in the bottom of, pretty much being dead. And I kept saying, "It's okay, it's okay. Your eyes are open and you're awake." And I saw it all from yoga, and then when we talked about the zip lining, I was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I get that."
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful.
I know, it's just amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Isn't it, when we change our relationship to the idea of dying, right? It changes everything.
Yeah.
It really does. And I'm not saying I've got it all figured out, because I don't, but I have had these experiences that tell me that when that moment comes, it's just a choice between fear and beauty.
Yeah.
That's it.
I thought I was like, wow, it's so beautiful looking. I'm just laying there, and
Yeah.
there was no judgment in it. I was just laying there, and I'm like, that's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Would anybody else like to share or ask any questions? Are we good? Yeah? So you've all got it now.
We'll be back for more.
Everybody on Facebook has it now too. And so now Facebook, I expect that when I go onto Facebook later, all I'm going to see is a bright shining light of peace and love and compassion. We can hope. So let's sit up nice and tall, and we'll close the eyes. Take a nice breath in, a nice breath out. As you breathe in, feel that you are receiving the greatest gift, the gift of life and love, the gift of prana, the gift of awareness, the gift of awakening. And as you breathe out, feel that you are sharing that gift with all beings everywhere. Sharing life, love, compassion, sharing the prana, part of the greater conscious patterning of the universe, part of the greater oneness. As you breathe in and breathe out, for those who already have an intention, repeat the intention to yourself silently 3 times. For those who don't, create a simple intention, less than 10 words, about how you are compassion in this and every moment. And let that intention bring a sense of joy to the center of your being, and allow that joy to be the light of a candle. And allow that light, that flame, to grow brighter with each breath, with each repetition of the intention, until there is light streaming out every pore of your being, and every breath is full of light. And there is nothing but light. Nothing but light. Everything is light. Placing the right hand on the heart, left hand over the right. And together we'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om. Take a nice breath in. And bowing the head to the heart, acknowledging all that is, with courage and bravery, humility and patience, compassion and peace. And draw the face to center. Namaste. Thank you all so much. Thank you to those who spent the weekend with us, to those who spent the hour or two or the entire morning with us. Thank you to everyone who has joined us this morning and who has tuned in on Facebook. Thank you all. Namaste. And so now lunch is being served. So please do help yourself. Retreat attendees, the retreat is now concluded. I hope you have enjoyed your time with us and that you come back soon for more, because there's always more. The cup filleth over, runneth over. Yeah, runneth over. Filleth up and runneth over. And for anybody on Facebook, I hope you join us and enjoy us at some point in time for one of our upcoming retreats. Thank you all so much. Be well. Namaste.